to the 4-star books of the year. These are the books that are pretty good. They're not quite a 5. My 5s are reserved for the ones that truly were like, wow, amazing. But these ones are pretty good. They might not be completely perfect, but they were definitely better than a 3. So kicking things off, we have got Spinning Wyrd, A Journey Through the Nordic Mysteries by Ryan Smith. So this book I read before his other book, and you definitely need to read them in order. So the original book of Fire and Ice by obviously Ryan Smith, that one is the introduction to his tradition, and Spinning Wyrd is like the sequel to it. Think of like for Scott Cunningham, where you've got Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. This book, Spinning Wyrd, is the equivalent of Living Wicca. It's very much like that, where it's gonna pull a lot from the original book. And so you kind of need to read it because he's constantly referencing back to it. And if you've read it and then you read this one, it's like, oh, cool, you're calling back to things I just read about. But if you start with this, you're like, what are you talking about? So you got to read them in order. But I love that he very much is a modern pagan. He calls himself a radical Norse pagan, which basically just means that he's cool to be like, hey, the AFA sucks and we shouldn't be supporting racism, and like Reconstructionism doesn't always have a place, and very much more a modern approach. Next, we have got the Green Wiccan Spellbook, a compendium of magical knowledge by Silja, again with names. So this book, it really doesn't follow what the title suggests. It's not really a green witchcraft book, it's just your basic Wiccan book, and it's aimed at beginners, but I do kind of think you might need to have a little bit more of a foundation before you start doing some of the stuff from this book, because it's not really explained. But there was a surprising amount of like the spells and rituals in here that were actually impressive. They were complex, but then some were simple. It was a nice mix that I was actually surprised that I really enjoyed it. This is one of those books that I struggle so much. So, Outer Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Penczak. This series is the bane of my existence, and yet when I'm done, I love them. So just be prepared. If you want to really have your work cut out for you, do these books. They are massive. There are so many exercises to do. This one, I kind of feel like he should have started here, but whatever, it's his tradition. So I was more excited for this one. It is the second book in his Temple of Witchcraft series, and I think he calls it the Mystery School series or something like that. But basically, this one is a continuation from this first book, which is Inner Temple of Witchcraft. I have videos on Patreon of me going through both of these books. It takes so long, and like I epically failed to get through the third book because this year was insane. And that's the thing with his books. It's like, if you are ready to fully commit to like a true deep dive into the craft, that's gonna take some time, it's gonna take some commitment, and you're really up for that challenge, this is the book to go with. Like, this series is amazing for that. However, it is going to be a time commitment. Honestly, I wish I could have found these books and started with them when I was a teenager and like had more time and energy to put towards it, because like I have other things that are demanding of my time, and like when you're in, like I'm in my late 20s, so like I just don't have, it takes a lot of effort to get through these books. And so technically I finished this book out like right at the cusp of the beginning of this year. Like I think I had technically finished Outer Temple of Witchcraft in 23, and so it was like very early into the year. I was like, cool, I could do the review and like finish out this book. And now I'm sitting here and I still haven't finished the Shamanic Temple of Witchcraft, which is book 3, but it's fine. These are just like, if you are ready to like so much work as a witch, like he will get you set for success, but like, God, it is a commitment though. Next, we have got The Witch's Feast, a kitchen grimoire by Melissa Madara. So whenever I get a book from the library, I really never anticipate like exactly what I'm gonna get, because I just quick look. Like I see the covers and the titles and I just hit place hold, place hold, place hold, place hold, and then I go and pick them up. Because it's the library, if I don't like it, I can easily on my way out the door put it in the return box. Like, it doesn't faze me. It's free. Use your local library, and they also have interloan libraries. If they don't have something, typically you can find it through an interloan. Not always, but a lot of the times. And so like, I love the library, but I don't really look deeply into the books that I grab because it's free. It doesn't matter. And like, I read a lot of books. So this one, I didn't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. So this book is a like cookbook, but it has a lot of witchcraft pages and like information in it. And so the witchy pages were surprisingly like pretty helpful and like really interesting. The cookbook side of it is like definitely intermediate. Like, this is not easy cooking. It doesn't really flow with like the other like witchy like cooking recipes we have in like our typical like books. This is for like a cook, like an actual chef who knows what they're doing. Because there were so many ingredients that I did not recognize, and I'm pretty sure they don't even sell it at like a local grocery store. Like, you gotta go to a specialty one. And like, none of the recipes were really anything I would want to try. They're kind of exotic in a lot of ways, but the witchcraft side of it was surprisingly very interesting. Next, we have got Kitchen Witchcraft, The Element of Fire by Rachel Patterson. As the title would suggest, it is about the element of fire. And I'm just always impressed when somebody can write a book on just one topic in witchcraft like this, like one element, one tool. Like, it takes skill to figure out how to make that page count matter. Like, this is a small book, but it still takes a skill. And like, I definitely am always impressed with people who can do it and do it well. Next, we have got Wiccan Feasts, Celebrations, and Rituals. Make the most out of special days with witchy rites, decorations, and herbal magic touches by, again, Silja. So this is a collection of rituals that goes through the Wheel of the Year, but it also has like some more random like pagan observances throughout the months and just like general life events. It's got rituals, crafts, spells, and so much more. And like, obviously, I don't love every section of this book. Like, there's parts that I don't always agree with, and it's not always perfect, but I was left feeling so inspired from this. And overall, like, this is just it. The formatting and the art of this book is just absolutely stunning, and it definitely gave me a lot of ideas to try at home. Next, we have got Heart Magic, Wiccan Rituals for Self-Care and Self-Love and Self-Care by Harmony Nice. So this is a book that I really wasn't sure I was going to like. I was pleasantly surprised that I actually enjoyed it. It's all about connecting with yourself through a variety of rituals. And I was really hesitant because I really thought it was going to be just another trendy, like, Wicca 101. And like, she's pretty popular on YouTube. Like, I know her like numbers are substantially bigger than mine and has more of the aesthetic witch vibe. So I was really, really hesitant jumping into it, but she has some really, really good stuff in here that I was genuinely surprised. It actually is a very well-written book. Next, we have got Tarot Reversals for Beginners, 5 Approaches to Reading Upside Down Cards by, I think it's pronounced Leeza, but I could be completely and utterly wrong, Robertson. This is such a great resource to have on hand when you are trying to learn your reverse tarot cards. It's not bad, but it's like each card has like 5 different interpretations, as well as like a bit of an overview for like the groups of the cards, like all of the court cards mean this. And so I feel like this would just be a fantastic resource to combine with the Living Tarot, or like do the Living Tarot and then do this one, because it is really good for the upside down cards. Next, we have got Celtic Tree Ogham, Rituals and Teachings of the Something, Vowels and the Something. It's words I don't even know how to pronounce. By Sharlyn, Hidalgo? Names, suck at those. So this is a book that connects you to the last 10 of the Ogham, and it feels like you needed to go through these in order. Like, she has other books for the other of the Ogham. My library and the Interloan library, I could not find them, so I was kind of just stuck with this. And it felt like you needed the other ones. And like, I'm not very familiar with all of them. And like, I was a little disappointed that like, it didn't have all of them in this book, because it was very helpful, and like, it's got rituals and information for each one. So like, if you want to dive in, Like, this is a fantastic place to start, but just know that it's only the last 10. Next, we have got The Witch's Wheel of the Year, Rituals for Circles, Solitaries, and Covens by Jason Mankey. So this is a book that offers a lot of rituals that are designed for like all of the groups, as the title would suggest. You got some for large groups, small groups, and then for solitary for each of the Sabbats. Each one is explained for the beginner, like up to that point, and it's really more based on Wicca beliefs rather than witchcraft, where it's a little more broad. You got more like pagan rather than, and like the polytheist mindset rather than like the duotheist kind of deal where it's the goddess and the god. It's got more of that in here, but I was pleasantly surprised to really enjoy this. This is a book that I went back to so many times, I need to just buy her books. So, Brigid, History, Mystery, and Magic of the Celtic Goddess by Courtney Weber. How are you supposed to say her last name? I think of the city, but also, I don't know if that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. But anyways, her books are just so good. I have loved every single one of hers. I need to just buy the Morrigan one from her because they're just so well written. This book I have gone back to so many times. Like, she's got a handful of just really good stuff. Like, her writing is just awesome. If you want to deep dive into a goddess, she has Brigid, the Morrigan, and Hecate. I haven't read the Morrigan, but I've read the other two, and they were fantastic. This is another one I absolutely loved. Labyrinth, Your Path to Self-Discovery by Toni Christie. Again, there's just certain books that like you forget that you loved it. Because again, I've read like almost 200 books this year. But this is one I still find myself coming back to the concept all of these months later. Like, I read this very early in the year and I still love it. So this book just goes over the magic of labyrinths, the history of them, and mainly the emphasis is how you can use them. Absolutely love this. He gives you prompts to try, and like there is some Christian beliefs within it, but like honestly there's a lot that's equally encouraging towards pagan beliefs. So just, I don't know, I feel like there could be more towards the pagan side of things rather than the Christian side. But the fact that there's so much of like how to make your own labyrinth and like the magic of it, I still find myself wanting to go back. And after reading so many books, when there's one that I still think about without being prompted, that's probably a good sign. Next, we have got Crystals Beyond Beginners, Awaken Your Consciousness with Precious Gifts from the Earth by Margaret and Lembo, maybe? So this is definitely like a must-have if you're interested in crystals. It goes over a number of stones in ways like beyond what the beginner books do and expects you to like actually know a bit before jumping in, which I love. There are so few books for like intermediate to advanced, and when you find them and they're actually really good, it's so amazing, and this was one of those. Next, we have got Elemental Healing, a 5-element path for ancestor connection, balanced energy, and an aligned life by Camilla Lee. As the title would not suggest, it is not what you're thinking. It's actually the Eastern concept of the elements and like yin yang. And like, I don't know that I would completely like switch over to everything to the Eastern things, where instead of air, I think it's like wood, and instead of spirit, it's like metal or something like that. Like, it's similar, but not the same. But this is so interesting, and it did actually spark my interest in learning a bit more, because I was like an absolute noob looking at it. I'm like, I don't know any stuff really. But it's actually a fantastic book on the topic. So remember how we started this with Ryan Smith? We're back. I did end up getting the book. So The Way of Fire and Ice, the living tradition of Norse paganism. So obviously this is introducing his take on Norse paganism, and he has a lot of really good information. When you look into the reviews for this book, it literally shows how toxic the Norse community is. It's why I put it behind a paywall, because it is the most, well, maybe not the most, but it's, out of all of the pagan communities, they're the worst. Like, I think even like the Christian love and light people, like, they're less hateful than the Norse pagans. Like, they have such an ego, and like Ryan Smith went out on a drastic limb and called out to the community, and he called out all of their toxic behaviors, and obviously they didn't like it. Just like, if you're bored and you just want drama, just go and look at the reviews, because they are so hateful. And again, like, this is coming from somebody who, I like the idea of the Norse, like, pantheon. I love these gods. I like the concept and like some of the things from them, but the community in the modern time is so unbelievably toxic, and it has a baggaged past anyways, because, you know, the Norse counts Germany, and there's, you know, kind of a big deal in the early kind of, you know, 1900s. So like, it's got baggage, needless to say. And so like, the fact that these people are just so toxic makes it so hard to want to even bother with these deities. And Ryan Smith challenged them, and you have to be a strong person to do that. That's why I don't know that I'll ever write on the Norse gods, because it's like, I don't want that community. Like, they are just so unbelievably just, and I keep saying it, but they're just toxic. They're just a horrible group of people, and I want nothing to do with them. I have never really met any that are very kind. The only one that I found is my husband, and even then, he's not like the hardcore Norse pagan. He's really more witch who works with the Norse gods. Like, he doesn't follow their tradition exactly, because like, again, all of the actual Norse pagans and like heathens and Ostatru and all of the things that I've encountered online, IRL, they're very toxic. And I'm sure it's very cringy actually to say IRL in a video, but you know what? It's fine. I'm a millennial. That's my job to be cringy. Anyways, next we have got Paganism in Depth, a Polytheist Approach, Foundation, Practices, and Challenges by John Beckett. So this discusses a variety of topics for intermediate to advanced polytheist pagans, and like some things that you might want to consider. It was really well written, and like some of the points are only applicable because you've been doing this for so long. So it's like, it's finally a book for people who are not beginners. Next, we have got Tarot Inspired Life. Use the cards to enhance your life by, maybe that's supposed to be pronounced Jaymi, Elford. So this book takes tarot beyond the beginner books. It gives you different things to consider with a bit of a witchy twist. It's so great to be moving beyond like the one-on-one books and looking to actually deepen your connection to the tarot. So it's not really great for beginners, but there's like literally hundreds or thousands of books for beginners. So again, when we can find some that's outside of that, it's fantastic. Next, we have got Well-Being. Move into energy balance through meditation, the chakras, the 5 elements, and feng shui by Jill Henry. So this is one of those books that I was pleasantly surprised to find that I actually liked it. So it's more of like a new age approach to doing like your inner work, and it has a lot of various meditations for you to do. But the information is presented very well and has a lot of helpful tips. Really, it focuses on meditation and more Eastern beliefs like feng shui, the Chinese elements, and the chakras. Next, we have got The Hearth Witch's Kitchen Herbal Culinary Herbs for Magic, Beauty, and Health by Anna Franklin. So this is actually a pretty good resource from her for your common kitchen herbs and spices. It includes a little bit of history, magical uses, recipes, and so much more. And I was thoroughly surprised that I actually enjoyed this. It's one that has quite a bit of good information. Of course, I don't always agree with everything, because again, it's got the same thing of like how a lot of these books are like, but copper and aluminum pans are going to taint your magic and taint your herbs. Like in this one, it was specifically for tea. And I'm like, I'm pretty confident it doesn't matter, but okay. But yeah, it's got a lot of really, really good stuff in here. Next is Mysteries of the Aura, How to See, Interpret, and Work with Subtle Energies by, I think their names are French, but I'm gonna not even butcher them because all I can think, the first one might be, it looks like Jean, but I think it's French, so it might be Jean. But I could absolutely 1000% be wrong because I never took French. So I'm just gonna not butcher names. So this book is going in depth on the auras. It's got a bit more of a Freemasonry stance, but also it addresses a few other beliefs, and it's definitely really highly researched. And like, it's not one that personally I really liked, but It's so well written, and like the exercises will definitely be helpful if it's something you're interested in. And like that's the thing, is like sometimes the book is not for me, but other people might really enjoy it. And so if you're like looking into auras and like you're down for a bit more of a Freemasonry stance, it's definitely for you. Magic for Troubled Times, Rituals, Recipes, and Real Talk for Witches by Deborah Casolano. Again, with names. So this is a small toolkit of ideas for you to consider as a witch when you're going through some troubling times like death, divorce, and so on. Like, this is a book that, like, it had some good stuff. It definitely is a little dramatic when it comes to the pandemic and her experience, but overall, the writing is super fun and sassy, and I loved it, especially the first few chapters. And like, the rest of the book kind of just, it really detoured, and I think she had started the book and then the pandemic hit and it just took over the work, which kind of sucks. But overall, like, the thing is, this has an exercise that I have been using since I read this book. So she has this concept, and I think she's the only one who came up with it, and I cannot find it anywhere else, but I absolutely love it. I might, I kind of have tweaked it a little bit here and there, and like kind of adjusted how I view it to fit into my own like personal gnosis. But the concept is the sisters above and the sisters below. And basically what you do is, the sisters below is this concept where when you are feeling a lot of like emotions, you've got a lot of grief and hurt and anger and whatever, you like lay down on the ground. And I might not be doing it exactly because I definitely have adjusted it, I'm sure, over the months since I've read this. But you lay down and you visualize that you have thorns that are like where you are feeling that emotion, that memory, whatever it is that's like really bothering you. You imagine thorns in that area and you visualize yourself, and you can even physically like reach to that part of your body. But you grab these thorns and you hold them in your hand, and then you place them down into the ground and you visualize them going down, and that energy is being like used by the sisters below. And for them, they use it to like craft all of their things, and they use all of this like energy that we don't want, but they want. And it's so fascinating, and especially if you consider it like the world below, like the underworld. We have like Hades and hell and like their realms and what they're all about. And it's like, I kind of dig this idea. You could easily like tweak it and, work with the concept to make it work in different ways. But I absolutely love it, and I constantly go back to it all the time. Next, we have got Magical Fairy Plants, a guide for working with fairies and nature spirits by Sandra Kynes, names again. So this is a fantastic resource if you want to work with the fae, and also just a good resource on a variety of plants. Like, it's a really good place to just kind of kickstart your introduction to the topic as a whole. The entries are very well researched and range from common items like apple and pine to more random ones like mullein and silverweed. It's got a little bit of everything in here. Next is The Enchanted Kitchen, Connect to Spirit with Recipes and Rituals Throughout the Year by Gail Biasi, again with names. So this book is filled with a variety of recipes, and it's like a relatively low skill needed to actually try them. There are some spell ideas and some small rituals to do for each month. And honestly, the recipes are like, I'm so excited to try them. I haven't yet, but I want to. I need to just go buy this book. I haven't yet, but I need to, because it's got good stuff. You've got like upside down orange and almond cake. Sounds fantastic. Apple pancakes with honey butter. Hell yeah. Carrot and honey quick bread. Chinese stir-fry sauce, so long as it doesn't have pineapple. I don't remember if it has pineapple. I don't know if I knew that I was allergic to pineapple at that time. It's like one of those fun things that like, as you get old, your body just decides to just be like, nah, you can't have that food no more. That happened over the past like couple years, and it really got bad this year. I learned that I'm allergic to pineapple, and it's progressively getting worse. And I already have an allergy that gives me anaphylaxis, where you stop breathing if you get introduced to it. So like, I'm not gonna play that game because my body already knows how to just overreact. So yeah, it's got a lot of really good stuff in here, and it's got like an oven blessing. It's got, Rocky Road popcorn. Like, it's it's got so many good things in this book. I cannot wait to get a copy of it for myself and start doing all of the cooking. Next, we have got Tarot for Real Life. Use the cards to find the answers to everyday questions by Jack something. So this book goes over a variety of points for the beginner tarot reader. It's set up for each suit with themed chapters relating to each one. It begins with the minor and ends with a major, which honestly you don't see very often. And I think it's just a fantastic resource for learning the cards and for specifically using tarot spreads. I love the detail and love that was given to each card because, again, it is such a pet peeve of mine when the minor is just like this second thought and the major gets like the majority of the focus. Next, we have got Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing, Build Resilience, and Transform Your Life Through Astrology by Carmen Turner, and maybe that last name Scott. So this goes over your basic sun sign attributes and then goes through the different houses. And like, honestly, it is one of those things that like, it is moving into intermediate levels of astrology. And it's not something I really know a whole lot. Like, again, astrology is pretty broad. And so like, I just keyed in my chart to Cafe Astrology, and I don't know about the houses and stuff, but it's very interesting to read through, and like, I'm very curious, because like, the thing is like, personally for me, usually astrology lines up pretty well. Like, all of the things and stuff, it lines up. For my husband, it rarely ever matches. And like this one in particular, like the houses that were listed for my chart in particular, contradicted for me personally. Like, it's interesting, but like, I don't know. I'm very curious for other people if like you have gone through this and like, what does it do for you? Because like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about astrology because like, it doesn't always line up. And like, it's just, I don't know. Moral of the story. I don't know about astrology. So naturally, let's just keep with the theme. Birth Chart Interpretation, Plain and Simple by Andrea Taylor. Actually, her name sounds really familiar. I think she's written quite a few books actually on astrology. Now that I think about it, I feel like I've seen this name a few times, but like I never actually like read them consistently enough to be like, oh yeah, this is the author that did this. I wish I could tell you, but I can't. So this book kind of walked you through your chart. Some of it's explained, but others you only get like a very brief sentence and that's it. By the end, I was so lost. Like, astrology to this level, like, this is my note. Astrology reminds me of school, and I flunked math and science for a reason. Because it's still way over my head. It's not handy holding for this one. You kind of have to be, I guess, smart to get through it, and maybe I'm just not. Like, astrology is the equivalent of like calculus, of witchcraft, and I'm more like, let's go to like home ec and learn how to sew and like learn how to cook. That's my speed. I don't care about science and math. It's never been something I really cared about ever, and nothing has changed. Just astrology now counts in that category. Next, we have got The Witch's Book of Potions, The Power of Bubbling Brews, Simmering Infusions, and Magical Elixirs by Michael Fury. So as the title would suggest, there is a variety of potions and brews for a number of spell topics, such as the usuals. You got your love, money, protection, but it also had the Wheel of the Year and the Moon, which I really appreciated. And it also had a lot of information on the cauldron, but also, like, I don't know why my usual pots and, like, my crock pot isn't good enough to use, but, to each their own. And, like, some of the recipes were fine, though some of them did have, like, some random ingredients that you might not easily be able to find. But not all of them. There was definitely some that had, like, some regular ingredients that you could easily just go find. Next, we have got Aphrodite, Encountering the Goddess of Love and Beauty and Initiation by, again with the names, Iris Anna Moon. So this is part of the Pagan Portal series. They are so tiny of itty bitty little books, but this is a fantastic book on this goddess. There's myths, rituals, and aspects to this goddess. And like, obviously it's not the end all if you're wanting to learn about this goddess, but it is a really good place to start. Next, When Someone You Love is Wiccan, a guide to witchcraft and paganism for concerned friends, nervous parents, and curious coworkers by Carl M. McCullen. This is a great resource when you know that you're going to be addressing this issue. Like, at some point, you're probably going to have a coworker or a friend or a family or someone who's concerned about you being a witch, and this is just one of those books that you just hand them. It goes through it in like a very like question and answer method, and sections are kind of like divided into like related themes, like what Wicca is, what Wicca isn't, and so on. Honestly, like, I could have used this book many a time because there's so many times in my life at like jobs and stuff that it would have been so much easier just to hand them this book and be like, if you have more questions, let me know. But this just gives you an idea, because we need those. We need a lot of these little pamphlet-y, like, kind of just like hand them books, because it's a lot, and most of the time they don't actually care. Like, that's the thing, is like, I hate wasting my time with these conversations with people that I know actually don't care. So if you take the time to read a book, I will happily go over more questions that you might have, but like, also, I don't feel like spending 2 to 3 hours explaining things to you, when in reality, and sometimes they want it summarized in like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's like, that's not how that works. Like, if you had no idea what a Muslim believes at all, you have no concept of it in the slightest, could you really summarize it way down? And again, having zero context clues at all about it, could you really explain it? Or like what Tao is in like 5 minutes or less? I don't really think so. I don't think you're really going to give it the nuance that it deserves, you know? So like, sometimes these little books where you can just be like, here you go. If you have more questions, let me know. Next, we have got Paganism for Beginners by a person. So this book discusses like the basics of like modern paganism in a very broad sense, and actually it ended up being a really great follow-up to, I think it was actually the last one we just talked about. Yeah, When Someone You Love is Wiccan. Literally, this is the follow-up book to hand them. And it was really interesting to learn a little bit more about Circle Sanctuary, because like, I didn't know that like Spiral Scouts is a thing either, and like, that's something that it's kind of stuck in my brain, but also there isn't any here in Utah. So like, it's something I'll have to look into more when we get to that point in life when like our kids are of age, and like that's something to consider, and like how to do that. Like, they have like, I think it's like a online and like self-guided thing, so we might have to do that, because there's definitely not any here. It would be awesome if somebody wanted to start it here in Utah and have that going by the time I have kids in the next decade, but I don't know that I want to do that. I'm too busy writing and reading. Next, we have got Earth Magic, Elements of Witchcraft by Dodie Graham McKay. So this book, if you couldn't guess, goes over a variety of connections to the element of earth. It's got history, mythology, world beliefs, association, kitchen witching, kind of some folkish magic, and so much more. And like, again, I love these resources where it's on a specific topic. Like, this is the book to grab if you're curious about the elements. I don't think I've read any of her other ones. I just read the earth one, but it's really good. Next, we have got Human Design, the Revolutionary System That Shows You Who You Came to Be by Jenna Zoe. So this is an introduction to human design, and I think it explains it pretty well as like a starting point. And like, I know that like human design can get way more complex, but for like a first book, this is pretty good. And like, the interpretation of my chart for human design is actually surprisingly very accurate. And like, it explains over and over again, and it's really, human design is just like a different way to look at the world. You can look at yourself through numerology, you can look at it through astrology, and you can look through it for human design. And human design kind of combines a lot of things. It's a more modern take, and then some people hate that. Personally, I am like, we made everything up anyways, so like, it's fine. But you know, I really do enjoy human design, because so far out of them all, it's been really accurate. And like, I don't know, astrology is just so hard to get into. Like, it feels so complex. I have not found, and it probably actually exists, maybe I just need to see if I can find like the idiot's guide to astrology, because like, I need someone to hold my hand and explain it like I'm in 2nd grade, because I get so overwhelmed with it. It's so many things to keep track of. I hate it. I just need it explained very, very slowly and very dumbed down. And like human design, this book does that. It definitely held my hand in ways that I needed it to very slowly explain things. And it was so good. I love human design. I will say that when you get into the spaces for human design, sometimes you can get a lot of like that MLM thing of like, well, learn from me and you only have to pay me like $1,000 or more to learn about it, which sucks. But the other thing is like sometimes the pages that are dedicated to human design really pigeonhole you into like a very specific stereotype, and that's it. And like with human design, and really I guess you do it with numerology and astrology too, of like, well, of course, like for instance, Leos, sometimes y'all can want to be the center of attention and the center of the freaking universe, but also I've kind of found that typically that's when you're out of balance. And like an imbalanced Leo is actually just somebody who is confident, and there's a difference of having to be center of attention and just naturally being overly confident, and like not in a bad way. There's a difference. And again, sometimes the human design things, they don't do it very well. But anyways, overall, this book was absolutely fantastic. Next, we have got Wheels of Life, the classic guide to the chakra system. And I never know how to say her name, but Person. So this is like the complete guide to the basics of the chakras. You're going to find related discussions for each one, as well as like a meditation and exercises to do. And so this book, it's very well explained and is quite like in depth for a beginner book. I will say that like this book definitely ended very abruptly, and I wish that there had been a conclusion. But overall, like this is like the book to have on the chakras, and like I really loved that there was a lot of notes on like the childhood development stages with the chakras. I thought this was just a really good book. It's kind of a bigger book, but it's a good book. Again, there's certain books that I just constantly find myself coming back to, and here we are with Urban Fairy Magic by Tara Sanchez. This is the one I constantly find myself going back to when I think about fairies, because like, you know, there's certain books that talk about the fae, and it feels like it teeters honestly into the fantasy worlds that you're going to find in the fiction world. Like as an author, you're moving into the fiction, specifically into the fantasy section, and that's what they feel like a lot of the times. This keeps it very real, and I think it's like one of the best representations I have yet to find for the fae, because it's just so well written. I love the stories, and they're like actual encounters, and it's very realistic, and I absolutely love this book. If you're interested in the fae, like this is the book to get. Next, we have got The Introduction to Norse Mythology for Kids, a fun collection of the greatest heroes, monsters, and gods in Norse myth by Peter something. So this book begins with a bit of background information on the Norse, including their way of life, what a Viking was, housing areas, and so on. It then goes into a handful of myths and sagas, and then lastly, it gives a reminder chapter as like a glossary of the various characters. Honestly, it's a very good retelling of the myths in like a very approachable way. I did find it a little weird that like a third of the book was spent like explaining the Norse life, but also, I don't know, I think it's good. And like some of the language, I was kind of surprised that it was intended for kids, because like it described like a blood eagle, and if you don't know what that is, it's kind of horrifying to think of in a kid's book. And I kind of think that it probably would be better to put for young adult rather than kid, but overall, it was, again, when you can find the stories that are at least written in a way that makes it entertaining, it's pretty good. You Are Cosmic Code, Essential Numerology by Caitlin. I don't know how to say that last name. I used to remember, but now I don't. So this book discusses the basics of numerology, like your life path, life destiny, karmic lessons, personal year and months, and a little bit on relationships. I absolutely loved this book. I felt like it was a very modern but approachable way to look at numerology, because a lot of the books, there isn't. It's very old and it's very wordy and long, and it gets tiring to go through. And I really loved this. It was just the right amount of information and written in just a way that was really nice, and I remember going back to it time and time again. And like personally, I really love it. I love the ideas that are presented in here, and the way it's presented just feels really nice. And again, it didn't make me feel overwhelmed. I was a little bit disappointed, which I've noticed is kind of a thing in a lot of books where they just don't include where they got their information. But whatever. Next, we have got A Witch's Guide to Wildcraft, Using Common Plants to Create Uncommon Magic by J.D. Walker. So this book discusses the basics of working with plants, mostly found across the US. For each herbal entry here, there is like a quick summary, history, uses, and typically some spell or recipe to try. I think it's great for those interested in plants, and especially if you know someone who wants to know quite a bit. The author has definitely done the work and has the degrees and experience to discuss this topic very well. Like, it's not exactly what I would need personally. Like, I'm not really much of a gardener, but if you are, this is for you. Next, we have got Tree Magic, Connecting with the Spirit and Wisdom of Trees by Sandra, and again, with her last name, I don't know. She does a lot of like the reference books, to be honest. So this book discusses some of the common trees. Each entry gives a brief description of the tree, where it originated from, and some historical examples of it. It includes a guide for a quick reference for each one, and then a few like of the spell ideas and rituals and stuff. It's really great if you're curious about trees. And again, really, most of her books are just good for reference books. Like, reading them cover to cover, you might get bored, to be honest, but it's really interesting. She also had really cool information on the Celtic tree calendars and runic half months. Very interesting. Next, we have got A Mystical Practical Guide to Magic, and I love the title. It's so nice. Instructions for Seekers, Witches, and Other Spiritual Misfits by a Person. So this is a casual read on witchcraft. There's astrology, tarot, the invisible world, and so much more. Each chapter has homework and recommended reading. It's kind of got an element of a memoir to it, as the author discusses her experience and also like shares some tips and tricks along the way. Surprisingly though, I didn't mind that it was more of a memoir. It actually was really well written. And it's very casual in nature, but it gives you glimpses into her like life as a witch, and honestly, I ended up really enjoying it. Next, we have got Chakra Animals, Discover Your Connection to Wisdom of the Natural World by Angelica Stewart. So this was a great book and is 1000% what the title suggests. Each animal entry has a bit on the animal and a quick generalized overview of it, and then how it relates to each chakra. I really don't think I've ever come across this concept of like animals in the chakras, but it's very well written. Next, we have got Wisdom of the Wild, Life Lessons from Nature by Sherry something. So this is a fairly simple book. There are entries for various animals and plants. Each entry gives a brief description of it, and then there's a connection to like the human experience and an exercise to follow. I was really ready to hate this book, and I ended up really enjoying it. Like, the simplicity of it just kind of lined it up exactly with what I needed. I read this as we were dealing with a death. We had driven multiple states away to deal with it, and I just needed that simplicity in my life and just like a very like hold your hand, gentle, chill vibe, and it exactly delivered on what I needed. Next, we have got How to Meditate with Crystals, Simple Ways to Change Your Life by Jolie DeMarco. So this is a fantastic book on meditation and crystals. It gives several chapters of information regarding meditation and various techniques before diving into the crystals. The last part of the book has 33 meditations for you to do, like using various techniques and crystals mentioned throughout the book. Next, we have got Buddhism 101, A Crash Course in Buddhism by Arnie something. So this obviously is an introduction to Buddhism and a variety of related topics, such as some historical events that are relevant, philosophies of Buddha in a modern context, and other practices such as Zen. So honestly, I feel like this was a pretty good place to start on Buddhism. Like, I felt like I learned some of the basics, though it definitely did go off on tangents at times that didn't really seem relevant. And of course, it always bothers me when there's no conclusion or sources. The formatting in this was definitely a bit weird, but overall, like, I did come away feeling like I learned a little bit more on Buddhism, which is nice. 7-Day Chakras, Daily Energy Work to Balance Your Life by a Person, again with names. So this book gives an overview of the chakras before giving a detailed method to honor each chakra related to the days of the week, starting with Monday and the root chakra. There are meditations, affirmations, journal prompts, and suggestions to try throughout the day. I think it was very interesting. It's one that I have definitely considered. It's kind of weird when you're comparing the days of the weeks as it's set up here to witchcraft, because it doesn't always really line up. But if you're more into chakras or you want to change it up a bit, it's a great thing to consider. Next, we have got Sacred Nature, Restoring Our Ancient Bond with the Natural World by Karen Armstrong. So this book discusses the role nature plays in a variety of religions such as Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Surprisingly, it's very well balanced and fair when discussing each one with compassion and understanding for each one. And it's one of those that I think it would be very nice to be able to have, like, if you have like more open-minded Christians in your life, I think it would very much like speak to them on why we pagans and witches honor nature so much. And it's, you know, it's very easy for them to understand it because it's from like their language and their belief system and why it's important. And then you can easily start to transfer it over to like, well, as witches we do it this way, but you can kind of see it. It's really good. It's a concept that I didn't know that I necessarily needed, and I don't know how frequently I would need to pull out this book, but it's one that it would be nice to have if you do have, again, a Christian, which honestly, most of us are going to have more Christian interactions of having this problem than like the other religions, but you never know. And it's just nice to have that comparison. I did not know that I wanted this book, but it is pretty good. Next, we have got Mindful Tarot, Bring a Peace-Filled, Compassionate Practice to the 78 Cards by Leeza something. So this was a very interesting take on the tarot. It spent about half the book discussing it within like a mindfulness context. Various aspects of the cards are grouped into different approaches than like you'll usually find. The second half of the book is all about the individual cards. It's definitely a different take on the cards than what you're typically going to find. It's not a cover-to-cover read, just like a little bit here and there would be fine. Like the writing definitely got dull and a bit lagging at times, but overall, I do think it's a pretty good resource for the cards. I still find myself leaning towards the Living Tarot though as like my go-to for like learning the cards, but it's not a bad option either. Next, we have got The Beginner Witch's Handbook, Essential Spells, Folk Traditions, and Lore for Crafting Your Magical Practice by Leah Middleton. So this is an introduction to witchcraft. Some of the topics are more heavily focused on compared to like the usual intro books, like ancestor work. The second half of this book is various spells to do. Honestly, I was pretty bored with the first half. I didn't love it. There's nothing really new or exciting that the author really brought to the conversation. However, the spells in the second half of the book were so good. She includes detailed instructions on what to do with the remnants of your spell, which we don't have. I have had to contact authors to be like, but what the F do I do with this after? And like, sometimes I still really don't get an answer. And like, I really resonate a lot with like the autism community where you're like, I need to have the exact answer though. And you're not answering exactly. You're giving me the neurotypical answer and I need the neurodivergent answer, please. Because like, it doesn't help me. And like, I've tried, and like, I love Deborah Blake, but I tried this and she did not answer my question. And I'm like, you're not helping. And like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you just tell me what to do with the crap after is so much better, you know, because again, you're gonna have leftover stuff from your spells. And the fact that she included that instantly gave it a star because like, thank you for including it for me, very detailed, of what to do with the after your spell. What do you do with the crystal? What do you do with the little spell pouchy thing you made? Like, thank you for telling me what to do with it. Next, we have got Sanctuary of Your Own, Create a Haven Anywhere for Relaxation and Self-Renewal by Carolyn Dow. So this book goes over a variety of ways to make your home your sanctuary. There's a bit of combining concepts and cultures like feng shui, color, travel ideas, home decor, decluttering, and so on. It gives you a lot of ideas. Personally, for like handling like your organization and clutter, I'd still go to Clutterbug's channel. Her handling of it is far better like for that side of it, but this book gives you a lot of ideas of like home design that, again, I've had other books that we talked about for this year that definitely weren't good, so it's better than those. I like the idea of introducing like feng shui and color and stuff like that, and like really being mindful of like how, and very intentional of like how you're doing your space, and it was a good resource for that. Next, we have got Buddhism, An Introduction to the Buddha's Life, Teachings and Practices by Joanne Duncan Oliver. Maybe that's how you're supposed to say that, hopefully. So this is an introduction to Buddhism and some of the philosophies. Honestly, I feel like this was a really good place to start if you don't know much about Buddhism. There is a lot for like the history of it, and it's presented in such a digestible way. And it goes a bit more into like how to start, such as like with meditation And the recommended books at the end offer a variety of resources for you to consider as you research further. It was just really, really interesting. I liked it. If you're curious about Buddhism, it's a good place to start. Next, we have got Strong, Calm, and Free, A Modern Guide to Yoga, Meditation, and Mindful Living by Nicola Jane Hobbs. So this is an introduction to the full scope of yoga. It incorporates meditation, journaling, as well as poses. It builds upon itself over 10 weeks, which leads to about an hour of yoga by the end. This was surprisingly a very helpful book on yoga. If you're interested in starting to do yoga, it's a good place to start. Some of the poses do feel pretty advanced, and the modifications at times aren't really that modified. However, I think it's a good place to start if you want to start getting into yoga. Next, we have got A Year in the Enchanted Garden, Cultivating the Witch's Soul with Spells, Crafts, and Garden Know-How by Monica Crossan. So this is a fantastic resource for working on garden magic. It's divided into 12 months, each with planting tips, spells, and various bits of magic. I loved it. I'm not sure how helpful it's going to be for my extreme climate of like, you know, really, really hot in the summer. Sometimes we get really cold in the winter. Global warming, I'm not super mad about not having 0-degree days anymore. Like, I remember that growing up. I remember it even in like high school, sitting in my car, and it was literally 0 degrees at noon, and you're like, oh my god, it's so cold and so much snow. And this year, like, we have the very lightest dusting of snow, and I'm cool with it, because this year I need it to not snow in particular. But like, I still don't know how helpful this book would be for every climate, so like you might have to research a little bit. But overall, I really loved it. The stories were super fun throughout, and I was impressed that I didn't get bored reading through it, because that's something that definitely can get hard for me reading through some of these books. Like, cover to cover reads can be rough, and this kept me entertained the whole time. As you guessed by the title, I have decided to split this into 2 because it's gonna be like almost 3 hours long. So obviously that's the raw footage, and editing down it will go down a little bit, but it won't go out until like late tonight. So I am giving myself some grace, and I'm going to break this into 2 because I have other things I gotta do today. And again, I'm working on publishing for next month, and like the month starts tomorrow, so I'm splitting this in half. So here we are, the end of part 1 for my 4-star books. We will continue on tomorrow for part 2, which is going to be about the same amount of books. So like, it's still going to be a long video. Just prepare for that. And yeah, so keep an eye out for that. Huge thank you to my patrons. And if you want to support me, it's patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. And until next time, thank you so much for watching these end of year videos. I love making them. It is technically the last day of the year. It's fine. It's fine. It's just gonna go a little bit into the new year, but whatever. Life be crazy. So anyways, until next time, thank you so much for coming along for all of the books this year, and I will see you tomorrow for part 2. Blessed be.